We've all been transported to worlds beyond our wildest imagination with books. But books are also a great vehicle to get together and exchange ideas. Welcome to Books du Jour. Come and join our authors at the table. Welcome back to a new episode of Books du Jour. We have The Perfect Mother, Darnton, which is based on the Amanda Knox, The Murder in Italy. Bradford Morrow, The Forgers. It's all about handwriting and losing your hands. Right? Very much.
Right.
And Foreign Gods Inc. by Okey Ndibe. Ndibe.
Yeah.
You were telling me you traveled a lot in your past. You lived in Nigeria, where Okey is from, and was that always part of inspiration to write novels or books?
I was a journalist in those days, and I don't think actually I really thought of writing a novel until I came back, until I had processed all of that.
Okay.
I lived in Nigeria first. I lived there for 2 years. I have traveled a lot.
So you speak English as well?
I do.
Right.
Yes, I try. I try. The book is set in Spain because I love that country. I wouldn't say it's based on the Amanda Knox story. I'd say it was inspired by it.
Okay.
And in the sense that what's the same is that a girl goes for her junior year abroad. She's a middle class girl from America. We all know Amanda Knox is from Seattle. This girl is from Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia. She goes to Spain for her junior year abroad, but the part that captured me was, what would it feel like to get a call in the middle of the night? Your daughter tells you, "Mom, they think I killed someone. Come."
I know.
So that obsessed me, that thought. Every time I read Amanda Knox, anything about her, I thought about that. And finally I thought, of course journalists have to write about Amanda Knox, that's a story. But I'm a novelist, I don't have to write about Amanda Knox. I can write about what fascinates me, and that is the relationship and the underlying question, which is, how well do we ever really even know our children? How well do we know anybody?
Even your husband?
Even your husband.
Yes. I kept thinking about the Oedipus story, because we know about everything about Oedipus, but we never know anything about Jocasta, right?
Yes.
And her pain, to what it was like.
Yes.
And they remind me of that. And is that something that there's a fear of you and of yourself, like you could give birth to someone, to a monster?
So no, it was not my fear. It was my fear of an injustice happening that would disturb and destroy my otherwise perfect life.
Yeah. And the clash with the husband as well.
Yes. This novel doesn't reflect at all anything in my real life, but it does reflect my imaginative life of what would happen if something bad happened. And then when I started writing it, the story kind of took over, and it was clearly, from a novelist's point of view, more interesting if it wasn't just an injustice, if there was something to find out.
But don't you think it's always tied to some deeper corner of our minds, or
yes,
or personality, that there's a lurking fear or lurking desire to know something we don't know about?
You asked me before, am I a perfect mother?
And
I know, but I have to answer that by saying
Okay.
I dedicated.
I've touched something.
You touched something. I wish I were. I dedicated the book to my 3 children from their less than perfect mother, but who loves them very much.
Yes. And what's meant to be perfect anyway? You know?
Yes,
It's
that's
all,
another question of the book.
Yes.
Because actually she's not a perfect mother either.
Are you a perfect crime writer or write food?
I doubt it.
What's the story? Because I have read the book, and I know it's about manuscript and rare books and finding, but it's also a question of identity lurking behind everything.
Well, that's the interesting part about forgery.
Okay.
I was having lunch with my editor, Otto Penzler, who's a great mystery editor, and he asked me if I'd consider writing a bibliomystery, and it wasn't a term I had ever heard before. You can sort it out pretty quickly. It's a book or a story, a narrative in which there are books and there's a murder. So if you hit somebody over the head with a Gutenberg Bible, then you've got a bibliomystery.
That's right.
But I immediately asked him, can I work with forgers? Because I know quite a bit about rare books. I thought the thing about forgery that's so fascinating is that these are people who are not just messing with books, they're messing with objective reality. They're messing with history. They're messing with biography. They're changing what an author had done. If you sign, let's say, a Conan Doyle book, first edition, and you inscribe it to his brother
As a forger, or was
as
it
a
the
forger,
author?
well, then you date it. You're inscribed to a woman, let's say, and you date it, or you put it sort of with great affection or something. You're suddenly putting a new bit of biographical history into Conan Doyle's life that wasn't there before. So this really runs kind of deep. What is real? You know, what's actually authentic? People even collect good forgeries.
Really? There's a market for that as well?
Libraries collect. If you have a Thomas Chatterton forgery, or a William Ireland forgery, you've got something that's actually unique and valuable. William Ireland was completely audacious. His father was a Shakespeare scholar and collector, and of course there are no Shakespeare manuscripts around. There's nothing left. So William Ireland decided to right that wrong, and so he created. There were a handful of actually authentic Shakespeare signatures. I think 4 or 5.
The forger itself is capital gain, or what is it? The purpose, or is it just to mislead people for whatever reason?
No, I think it runs a lot deeper than that. The forgers in my book, our narrator in particular, he really wants to become Conan Doyle. Just for a moment, when he's forging something, he's forging manuscripts. He's really not just signing books. To do a good forgery, you have to be very knowledgeable, very skilled. It's not just being a good calligrapher or something. You have to know the historical area you're working in. Anyway, this William Ireland started forging Hamlet manuscript that he gave to Dan. Oh, I found this trunk full of Shakespeare manuscripts. And he fooled every expert of the day. They all thought these were genuine Shakespeare manuscripts. So he was good at it.
Well, the road tends to lead back to Baker Street. What do you think that's happened? I mean, it was Conan Doyle really a master in the way of his writing, in a way to expose his mystery?
Will, my guy, Will, who doesn't really like his name, he only mentions it once in the book and then he sort of retracts. He's fascinated by Conan Doyle because he grew up on Conan Doyle. And so he's, in a way, he's almost, in his mind, he's a character. He's a character thinking he's a character. He's in Conan Doyle's world. And so it's this chameleon-like mentality that a good forger has to have. You really get inside the head of the writer or whoever you're forging. It's a fascinating psychological.
But it doesn't mean you are becoming yourself or you're becoming someone. You're just becoming a substitute of someone else.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he really wants to be himself. I think he wants to be
It's an
something.
evasion. Yeah. So, what was the point where you decided I have to write that book?
I got a first line. And I was thinking, like, what would you deprive a forger of that would be the most? You could take away his pens and his inks and his paper, but if you take away his hands, then you're going to have trouble forging anything. So the opening line is, "They never found his hands."
That's right.
And once I had that line, I stewed on it. I had a paragraph, and I just let it sit there for a second.
You dreamt it?
I didn't dream. I don't know where it came from. It just came right into my head. I was just thinking that little.
It came from somewhere.
What kind of deprivation would I put? And also, you have to think in terms of the murder because of the biblio mystery. I really like genre, working with genre as a literary writer. I think it's really interesting. It's liberating in so many ways.
I thought your book was very interesting on that front. I mean, many front, but that was very interesting to the mixed of the sort of genre writing with the thriller mystery, with sort of the literary bent you have, because you have a very strong literary voice. You know, your sentences are well crafted, not that anyone else's, but they're very they're stylistic. You know?
Yeah.
Is that something is intentional, or it was just something that years of writing you just didn't pay attention?
It was years of writing. I don't sit down and say, now let me craft myself a really beautiful sentence. Right? Let's start with a verb or a noun. You know, no, I don't think this book was written very quickly. When I finally decided, okay, I'm going to write it now, it was written in a matter of months. The fastest I've ever worked, and because I woke up every day, I was in the middle of it. And because I knew what I was doing in terms of the rare books and the rare book world, it just kind of presented itself to me. It was just, I was following it along. I was saying, oh, wait for me, I'm here too. So yeah, it was like a joyous experience, actually.
That's intriguing, really.
Baker Street to the street of Lagos in New York.
Yes.
How did you come up with your story? Maybe to tell our audience what the nutshell what the story is about.
Well, my novel, Foreign Gods, Inc., began its gestation when a cousin of mine told me that a deity, the statue of a deity in my hometown, had gone missing, so somebody had stolen it. And as a writer, when you hear such a fascinating story, you want to know more. You're curious. So the first thing that I wanted to look at was who could have stolen the statue of a deity. And since I didn't know the answers, I decided to do what novelists do best, which is to explore this mystery. As I sat down to write the story, it seemed to me that I was going to write a narrative where there is a Christian, evangelical Christian group whose pastor encourages his congregation, members of his congregation, to just go and take the statue of this deity in order to destroy it. About 60 pages into this story, a different idea struck me. I said, how about if there were a gallery in London or New York City or Amsterdam that buys and sells the statues of gods and other sacred objects pushed from different cultures of the world. As soon as this idea hit me, I became consumed by it, and so I ended up writing a story that is set in New York City, where there's a gallery called Foreign Gods Incorporated that buys and sells sacred objects, including deities from quote-unquote primitive or exotic societies.
I know you teach literature, right? Or is
Yes.
it post-colonial studies?
Well,
Is what you call it?
I've taught creative writing.
Creative
I've been a
writing, okay.
professor of creative writing, but for the last 4 years I was a professor of Africana, what they call Africana literature at Brown University. So I teach African and African American literature.
It's the story of the immigrants, especially
Yes.
from Nigeria. It's kind of transition from to the States. It must be
Yes.
brutal.
Yes.
Is that a relationship or identity, or how you define yourself when you have a post-colonial or post-British
Yeah.
the language, and you
Yes.
come to the States? How do you reconcile that?
Well, the novel that I set out to write became so many different things. In fact, I was just asked last week at a literary conference, would I see my novel as an immigrant novel, or an exploration of greed, or an examination of the ways in which we have become obsessive consumers, even of the sacred.
Maybe all of it.
Oh, precisely. So I said, I indicated to this person who was moderating a discussion that it's not my business as a writer to stipulate how readers are to read my novel, but that if I had any suggestion to make, I would suggest a broader, more inclusive way of looking at the novel. So it's a lot of different things. As an immigrant in this country, I've had a very interesting adjustment to America, and that adjustment continues.
Sure.
And so it was important for me to have a protagonist who is facing or who's faced some of the issues that immigrants in any society would face, but also one that is compounded by this idea of just incessant compulsive consumption.
I'm surprised you said that, because being a professor, a PhD in literature,
Yes.
I feel like people have strong opinions.
Yes.
And then when you write something, you would try to say something.
Yes.
You know, make
Yeah.
the subtext of critic. You know?
Yes,
And
yes.
you seem like it's not your case. You leave it wide open to people,
Well,
for me to make my own
I
interpretation.
sort of wear two
Okay.
two hats, as it were. As a scholar, when I look at a text, I have a way of reading that text. As a creative writer, I actually believe that every reader becomes a co-creator of meaning in a text. When I listen to readers, I get a lot more about my own work, you know, because of seeing what they see in the text that a lot of times isn't apparent to me.
So what was your acting process? Was it fast? Was it slow? Like Bradford
No,
said,
not
you
at
just
all.
crank
I
it
wish
out?
I had your facility.
Oh, don't worry.
I wish I had your
Those books
facility.
Take me years.
Yeah. Well, my first novel, Arrows of Rain, took me 3 years to write.
This is your second God.
This is my
Foreign
second
Gods,
novel. Foreign Gods Inc. is my second novel. After the first novel came out, published by Heinemann in the UK, it became their best-selling novel in 10 years. And as publishers often do, they said, we want another manuscript from you quickly. So I told them that I didn't do a novel quickly, that I could try my hands at short stories. And so they said, okay, give us 8 or 10 short stories and so on. Well, Foreign Gods Inc. therefore began its career as a short story.
I see, okay.
And it ended up 8 years later as a novel.
Being Nigerian, there's massive community of diaspora in London, in England.
Yes.
Do you feel like it's a different reception from British Nigerians and Americans?
Amongst Nigerians, it's been extremely well received, not only amongst Nigerians, but also Africans in general, because the protagonist of my novel has gone to school in this country, a prestigious liberal arts college, Amherst College, and where he studied economics.
Yeah, okay.
He hopes to have a good corporate job in New York. Instead of which, because he has a particularly strong accent, he's unable to get hired. And so he ends up as a cab driver until he makes this really treacherous decision to return to his birthplace to steal what used to be the god of war for his community and to sell it to the gallery.
You feel like your mother is feeling betrayed by her own daughter?
Yes, to put it mildly, I don't want to be a spoiler.
Well, you can tell us how it starts.
I mean, it starts with a family, a husband and wife, asleep in their Philadelphia home, and the phone rings in the middle of the night, and the mother picks up the phone. The husband says, "Get it, will you, honey?" And she picks up the phone, and there is her daughter, Emma, crying, weeping. "Mom, Mom, please come, I need help." "What's the matter, Emma?" She switches on the light. "What happened? What's the matter?" Her husband sits up in bed. "They think I killed someone. Please come." And she says, "What? Tell me, who? You killed who? What? She said, I can't talk. Just come. Tell Daddy I need a lawyer." And she hangs up.
That's it, yeah.
And that's how this adventure begins. The mother rushes off to save her daughter from these terrible people who are hurting her and who are unjustly accusing her. And when she gets there, her daughter acts, frankly, like a brat. She doesn't seem grateful. She's uptight. She's tense. So she puts this down to, the terrible stress of this situation. And as always, she overlooks the bad and stresses all the mitigating circumstances, because that's what this mother does. And so little by little she starts to explore, and she actually hires a detective to help her. And with the help of this detective, she starts to find out that she never really knew her daughter at all. And of course this feels like a betrayal, but it doesn't mean her daughter is a murderer. It just means her daughter is not what she thought she was. In fact, she learns little by little, and quite painfully, that nothing is the way she thought it was. Her marriage isn't what she thought it was.
Yeah, I was going to say that, because it feels like along the process, almost like the daughter's drama is an excuse to discover herself again.
Yes,
right?
yes, that's exactly
and that's
right.
pretty much what the identity of the book is about.
Yes,
Themes, yeah.
yes, that's exactly right.
So you write from the eye, the first person. That was an interesting choice, wasn't it?
Well, I didn't really give it that much thought. It just seemed perfectly natural to me.
Really?
If I wrote from when you write from third person, omniscient,
Well, in thriller, that's often the
it's
case.
very hard not to look down on characters who are doing
Sure.
evil things. It's hard to keep the neutrality, get the voice right. So it just made perfect sense. Also, I wanted to get inside his head as far as anyone can get inside anybody's head. So yeah, it would give me an opportunity to, here's somebody with things to hide. Here's somebody who was a forger who got caught. Falls in love. He's trying to put his life back together again, and then he thinks everything's fine, Then he starts receiving threatening letters written in the handwriting of long dead famous authors. You imagine getting a letter in the mail from Henry James saying, "I know all about you, and you're going down." Yeah. You know, and this, you know, this like perfect. This James is stationary. So now there's somebody out there who's every bit as good as he is, who has problems with him, and so it made for a very tense setup. And he flees off. He tries to reinvent his life and goes off to Ireland, not just Ireland, but in the, you know, Kenmare, Ireland, way in a very rural village in Ireland, and
he's hiding.
He's hiding, and he thinks he's, and then suddenly he gets another letter, and meet me at such and such hotel. The last 30, 40 pages of the novel, I remember I hadn't actually hadn't finished it last year this time. I had another month of writing to go last year.
So you did no outline? You just
well, I don't sit down and outline. The Forgers was a book that it's on a fairly linear frame. So again, the writing of it in such a dense period of time, I kind of knew where everything was at all times.
I think it's a great topic because the forger implies you using your hands to do it, because it's like an art form.
Right.
And we are surrounded by devices that where the hand is just punching. No, but there's nothing really personal between my writing or yours, apart from the style. Is there something about you that value the past and the humanness of the handwriting?
Well, I think collecting is a very fascinating madness. I mean, people collect everything. I'm very fond of Bakelite napkin rings, you know, so go figure. I don't have very many of them, but I mean, you know, people collect teapots and all, you know, whatever. I think
you collect hands? Is that what you're trying to
say? I don't think so. Those hands, I did have to account for those hands, by the way, at the end of the book. I'm curious, did you know Chinua Achebe when you were up at Brown? Because he was just there right before.
Well, I was just telling her before we came on air, Chinua Achebe was the person who brought me to this country.
Oh, brilliant.
And actually brought me to edit a magazine that he founded called African Commentary.
He was my colleague at Bard for many years. Before he went up to Brown, I loved Chinua.
You have a quote from Soyinka too,
yeah? Yeah, and I've been very fortunate.
Yeah,
I've been very fortunate. Yes. In fact, I was just with Soyinka last week. Several major African writers, you know, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the Kenyan novelist, who is one of my most extraordinary writers in the African American letter, John Edgar Wideman.
Sure.
You know, so Chinua Achebe, he and I actually had a 30-year relationship. So when I started out as a young journalist in Nigeria, before I took up the job, I had gone to visit a girlfriend of mine who happened to be from Achebe's hometown. So here I was raving about Chinua Achebe. And then she said to me, he's my uncle, and he's home at his country home the weekends. She said, if you want to meet him, let's go.
Well, I don't want
so I went, and I told Achebe that I had just got a job with this newspaper, actually a weekly magazine, and that I would like to interview him. He gave me his phone number. So when I reported to take up my post, I told the editor that I'd met Achebe and he would give me an interview. So he said, that's your first assignment. I interviewed him for 3 hours. Then I came back to my hotel room and some of my friends came and said, we'd like to hear Achebe's voice. And I pressed play.
It's such a beautiful
And there
voice.
wasn't one moment of the interview that was captured. So of course, in panic, I called him. I said, I don't know what happened, but please, could I come back tomorrow and just give me 20 minutes? Achebe was a very extraordinarily generous man. So he said to me, I'm busy tomorrow, but if you come the day after, I'll give you as much time as you wanted. So 2 days later, I returned with 3 tape recorders.
It's great safe.
So I've written an essay, How Chinua Achebe Saved My Career. Yes.
You know, Achebe had, speaking of handwriting, one of the most beautiful, gracious handwriting. Gorgeous.
How do you know
I interviewed him too.
How do you know
he and I were colleagues at he
okay.
inscribed a copy of Things Fall Apart to me. It's one of my most cherished books.
And when I lived
did you get a copy as well?
I didn't get a copy, and I didn't know him, but I was a great admirer of his. I read everything he wrote, and I would have been a great privilege to have met him.
There's a great African literature, and very little comes over here.
Well,
You agree with that? Yeah.
Well, I think readers in the West are becoming perhaps more aware of this profusion of talent on the continent. I'm happy that more and more African writers are getting recognition
And
because there's great talent.
What's
from the
interesting,
continent.
taking the cue for you is almost to make a wave, you have to be outside the country. You know?
That's and
Yeah.
I was speaking about this just 2 days ago in Washington D.C. and I said that what I'd love to see is for the publishing industry in Africa to be strong enough so that they would discover and nurture the extraordinary talent on the continent. Precisely.
I wanted to thank you all for coming today. I think it's a great place to wrap. And you may not be the perfect mother, but you certainly sound like a great mother. Nina Darnton, the perfect mother. And Bradford Morrow, we had the Forgers, but he still has his hand on for the time being. That's great.
So far.
And Foreign Gods Inc. by Okey Ndibe.
Okay.
Okey Ndibe. I
Thank you
will get it
very
right
much.
sometime. Okay.